Dominic Cummings. I can't for the life of me understand why. And let me explain why. You've been phrasing a lot of your defence. I don't want to speak for you, but I think I'm right in saying that you think it's a rehash of the Brexit debate. Cummings is the personification of Brexit to many Remoaners.
Even though, and a huge number of Brexiteers have also criticised Dominic Cummings' behaviour.
I was about to say, I myself, for example, voted for this government despite having been a Remainer, because I wanted Brexit to be delivered and democracy honoured. So I think this categorisation that it's only Remoaners trying to do in Cummings. Theresa May has said he broke the rules. Jeremy Hunt, the former Health Secretary, said he broke the rules. Sajid Javid, the former Home Secretary, said he broke the rules.
Peter Bone, leading Brexiteer.
Let's just go on those, never mind the other dozens of Tory MPs who said it. So it's not just a Brexit thing. It's just that common sense says, whatever way you look at this Cummings thing, he took us for a bunch of mugs and did one thing for himself and another thing that he wanted us to do.
I don't think it is just Remoaners, but I think the intensity of it is explained by the Remoaner element. I do think there's a strong component of this, which is the revenge of Remoaners, and that's why it has taken on these hysterical proportions. I really do think this has become hysterical. A lot of people, it seems to me, are suffering from Cummings derangement syndrome. They are completely obsessed with this man. And I think the media has stirred up a witch hunt against him.
Don't you think that the problem is nothing to do with Brexit? But just as Scotland's chief medical officer had to resign because she'd gone to her second home on more than one occasion, and just because, Professor Neil Ferguson, who's the person, Professor Lockdown, told us that we had to do this to save lives, he had to resign because he had a lover to his house. What people don't like is not how you voted or campaigned in the Brexit referendum, but whether you're a hypocrite for saying we all have to do one thing, but you, in your position of authority, are somehow exempt from the rules.
I find the lack of empathy for Dominic Cummings and his family completely staggering. As it happens, I don't think Neil Ferguson should have resigned for having relations with his lover. I think that possibly he should have resigned for his dodgy scientific models, but not for his private life. What Cummings did and his family, they fled a home that was often under intense pressure, as we've seen over the past few days, because they were gravely ill, because they couldn't find childcare.
Actually, that's a load of nonsense, Brendan.
They weren't
I'm sorry. That is just nonsense. A, there were none of these scenes outside Cummings' house at the time. B, he had no symptoms whatsoever. C, he said that the reason he was able to go back to work was he didn't think his wife had COVID symptoms. So all of this is complete baloney. What Cummings tried to do, because he had weeks to prepare his response, is invent a series of reasons which might be plausible. And I don't give a stuff if he's Conservative, if he's Labour, if he's Liberal. I don't give a damn about any of that. I give a damn, rather like I did with Rosie Duffield, the Labour whip who resigned her whip yesterday. I give a damn that these people are doing one thing and they expect the rest of us to do something else. That's all I care about.
Let's talk about baloney, shall we? Baloney is the idea that Dominic Cummings went to Durham twice. That was front page news.
I agree.
Untrue. And it was amplified. It was amplified by people like you, Piers, and I really think
I didn't actually. I didn't amplify that. No, I'm not having that. I only care about the stuff we know that he's admitted to doing.
You amplified it.
Let's just focus. I don't agree with the media scrum outside his house. I think is wrong. They're not obeying social distancing.
It's intimidating.
I don't like the neighbours being encouraged by Emily Thornberry to go and scream abuse. I think that is wrong. On many of the points you make about that kind of thing, I totally agree. And on a personal level, I always empathise with anyone that comes under media storm because I've been on it myself. It's not nice. It doesn't change my central point that what Cummings did every step of the way is stuff he was telling us we shouldn't be doing. And the fact that Boris Johnson and the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, have so steadfastly supported him is taking the rest of us for a bunch of idiots. And what we're seeing now is the lockdown collapsing because people are thinking like me, well, why the hell should we bother if Dominic Cummings is going to get away with it, supported by the entire cabinet?
I disagree, and I think the media ought to get its own house in order before it worries about what goes on in Dominic Cummings' house. I actually think it's incredibly important that so many things that we were told turned out not to be true. The second trip, smelling the bluebells, visiting family members when in fact he was staying in a separate house. And this idea that he was doing things that the rest of us stopped doing, for example, going to funerals, like Sonia's terrible story, he missed the funeral of his uncle who died from COVID. So I just don't accept this idea that he was gallivanting around the country while the rest of us were making sacrifices. And I think that is a distortion by the media, and that's what's led to the mob.
So was your understanding, Brendan, was your understanding at the end of March that if, I don't know are you married? I don't know your circumstances. No. You're not. Okay. But if you were, hypothetically, I'm married, okay? If I'd rung home and my wife said, I'm really sick. And at that moment, I just heard that my boss, two of my bosses, had gone down with COVID. And I went home to my sick wife. My presumption would be she had COVID. And then I put her and my daughter in a car and drive to a second home, which was completely against what we were being told to do. And then I take them to an NHS hospital when me and my wife both have what we think is COVID. And then we go on a jolly to a castle, again, completely against what we're told to do. At what point does even your blind support for someone like Cummings in this go, you know what, this just wasn't right? And what he should have done was come out and gone, I'm sorry. I acted as a father. I did what I thought was right. I now recognise it's wrong and apologise. He couldn't even do that.
I don't have blind support for Cummings. I'm critical of Cummings on many, many things. The thing that worries me most about this story is the hyper-moralism that has surrounded the whole lockdown debate. You know, the shaming of stressed-out mothers who sat on a park bench, the shaming of people who went to the beach even though it's incredibly unlikely to spread the virus in the sunshine, the shaming of Neil Ferguson for his sexual relations, the shaming of Dominic Cummings for doing what he thought was best for his family. This moralism, I think, is really ugly, and it will haunt
the moralism, Brendan, the moralism was driven by Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson and Neil Ferguson. These were the people that came up with the moral rules that we all had to abide by. It was them that told us we had to stay at home to protect the NHS and save lives. And it's them that have been caught cheating on their own rules. We're not setting the moralism here. The public are trying to get their head round obeying rules from their government, and then they're seeing chief medical officers, the modelers who prepared all the data on which the rules were based. They're seeing the chief advisor to the Prime Minister all flagrantly ignoring them. And they're thinking, why are we going through all this hardship if the people who set the damn rules are breaking them? That's the point. That's where the moralism comes.
I don't disagree with you that this is a top-down moralism, but I don't think there's any need for members of the public to squeal on their neighbours who have a second jog, or for members of the press to go and take photographs of people in the park and say, what are these people doing in the park? What are you doing in the park? That's my question to those people.
We were allowed to go in a park. We were allowed to go in a park and maintain social distancing for 1 hour of exercise at the time Cummings did this. You've got to remember what the rules were like at the time. Anyway, look, we've got to leave it there. The point about this is 81% of the British public in the latest poll say they believe Cummings broke the rules. Whatever way you want to phrase them, what the rules were. We all knew what we were being told to do, and we all know he did the complete opposite.
And if you're trying to enforce rules but breaking them yourself, it's quite hard.
I want to thank Andrew Davis for coming on the programme, because we couldn't get any other Tories to come on. So thank you for coming on. Sonia, I want to say how sorry we all are for what happened to you. I know so many families who've been in your position, friends of mine whose last conversations were with their mother on FaceTime in a care home where COVID had erupted. It's utterly heartbreaking. The fact that you abided by the rules and didn't see your mother in that situation is heartbreaking. And it just illustrates why we're either all in this together and we all obey the rules, or we're not. It's a simple choice. And you made choices which you felt were right because your government had told you of the risks, and the people that set those rules broke them, and they've done it with the full support of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. And it's a smack in the face for everyone that did what you did. And I'm just so sorry that you've had to have this added insult to the injury that you and your family have suffered. But thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it.
It is 12 minutes past 8. Just want to update you. The Business Secretary, Alok Sharma, has been doing the rounds, as it's known, in media circles. And he was challenged on BBC Breakfast this morning about the number of tests which have been carried out. Now, of course, for the last 10 days, the government has not told us how many people have been tested. So he was asked to answer that question.
For that 9 days in a row, the government's not actually said how many people are being tested. So can you tell us how many are being tested every day?
Well, forgive me, I may be wrong, but I think this was set out. I think it was around 115,000. I think it was the figure that was set out yesterday. I'm happy to revert to you.
Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Just be clear, we don't have a figure on actually how many people are being tested. We know what capacity is, but how many people? If you could give me that figure, we would appreciate it.
Well, as I said, I was under the impression that that figure was set out at the press conference yesterday. Very happy to come back to you on that.
He doesn't even know. He doesn't even know. He won't come on this programme. We're on day 33 of the government's boycott of Good Morning Britain. Now, one of the reasons is, the next question I would say to him was, you don't even know, do you, Alex Sharma? You're a member of the government in a global pandemic and you haven't got a clue how many people are being tested. You think the number of tests being announced is the number of people being tested. In fact, the reason the government 10 days ago stopped telling us how many people were being tested came just after Public Health England had to admit that actually they were counting, if you had 2 swabs, one in your nose, one in your throat.
Which is the standard way.
Which, by the way,
test.
is how most people, when I had mine done, that's how most people get tested. They were counting it twice as 2 tests. They were cheating. They were lying. They were conning you. And now, ever since that came out, suddenly we're not being told how many people are being tested. Oh, we're being told there's a capacity for 200,000 tests now, which is fantastic, isn't it? I've got a capacity to sleep with 100 supermodels.
I don't believe that's true.
Do you know how many I'm currently sleeping with? 0.
Oh, come on. Celia's practically a supermodel.
Okay, one. It's a load of nonsense. And the fact that the business secretary doesn't even know that the number of tests being conducted is not the same as the number of people is utterly disgraceful. So you stay away from our show, government ministers, if you're that incompetent. Because we're going to ask questions which will make you look very stupid. Like, how many people are really being tested? Why did you count each person twice?
I don't think that's a question that requires them to look stupid. It just requires them to give the right answer.
Counting 2 tests, if you have a swab here and a swab here, when that is the basic way of being tested, is a total scam. It's a scam. And Matt Hancock knows it's a scam. I've tweeted him every day, demanding to know how many people are being tested. 10 consecutive days, he's refused to reply. And 10 consecutive days, the government hasn't published information. We're being taken for mugs.
I wonder why.
Mugs like we were with Cummings, mugs like we are with this.